again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Haven't touched it in a while, so let's do it. What are some of your scariest experiences in regards to the occult or witchcraft? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I don't know if this was the reaction of a child's mind or what, but my biological mom made it very well known she practiced witchcraft. She once told me she cast a spell on my dad to have bad things happen. They were apart before I was born, but Dad had full custody from basically the beginning. Then he lost his job. A few years later, my stepdad beat me within an inch of my life, and I no longer had to visit them. The last time I saw my mom, at the courthouse where the judge made the decision, I no longer had to have contact, and she told me she would see me in my dreams. For months later, every night I would dream I was in my room and there was my mom sitting in my chair with the scariest smile on her face I've ever seen on anyone. She would also just appear in happy dreams, and the dreams would immediately become terrifying. So chalk that up to what you want. It could have been my fear, could have been my witch of a mother trying to punish me for choosing my father over being beaten. My mom and her roommates in college really hated one of their roommates because she was a bitch. So they got drunk one night and made a little voodoo doll out of her, with a bit of her hair from her brush to really top it off. Then they drove a nail through the doll's head. The girl died a few weeks later of a brain aneurysm. A friend of mine has a story about his aunt. She was friendly with her neighbors, an elderly couple who died within a few months of each other. Their house was being sold and was vacant for a while before their children cleaned it out. One day, the couple's son came over to my mate's aunt pretty shaken up, asking if anyone had been in the house. Someone had laid out 2 outfits belonging to the deceased couple on the sofa with shoes and everything, and had written a load of ineligible writing on the walls in lipstick. He thought it was some kind of ritual. Odd, as apparently there was no sign of a break-in, and my mate's aunt didn't see or hear anything. In kindergarten, I met a kid named Andrew. He was the best at everything. I was such a good reader that the teacher had to create a new top tier just for me, and then she added Andrew. One day, a substitute teacher demanded we all be quiet while she spoke. If we didn't, everyone would get a bad mark. Sure enough, one kid decided to ruin it all for us. Everyone got bad marks except for Andrew. One day in 4th grade, Andrew and his friend Ross took me aside to the corner. They told me that they had magical powers and wanted me to join their club. I thought they were pulling my leg, but Andrew wasn't the type to lie, so I played along out of curiosity. Andrew took me aside to talk to me about it while we watched the kids play soccer. He developed his powers to protect him from his older brother's tantrums. He told me that he was using magic to defeat an evil power that was all around us. Other kids were asked to join our group, and they said it wasn't real. It was the evil power that made them say that. One of the kids playing soccer kicked the ball onto the roof. Andrew told Ross to go get the ball down. Ross pointed to the roof and the ball came rolling down. The roof was flat. Another time, I was talking to him after school. He was doing homework and I stood leaning against the desk. I was annoying him, so he said, "Be quiet or I will smite you." He thrust out his hand and the desk I was leaning against fell backwards a foot or so, enough to make me fall over. After 2 months of testing, I was to join his cult and gain powers of my own. I marked my calendar for the 3rd of July. With summer coming around, I didn't see Andrew as much anymore, but one day, when my trial period had just 2 weeks left, Andrew found me again. He said that he could no longer use magic. I asked him why, and he said, "Because that power is from the devil, and I must never use it again." When 5th grade came around, I watched Andrew's grades slip. He got in trouble for things he once got off scot-free for, and one by one, people stopped hanging around him. In 6th grade, he was hospitalized by another student and never came back to school. I saw him only a few times later. When we were 16, I asked him about his magic. He didn't deny it was real. He only said it was ancient history. I never brought it up again. That chapter of my life was to be buried away forever. I mean, if this really happened, strange and awesome. This should be made into a book or a movie. Let's go. Come on. My great aunt and her friends were spiritualists back in the day. It was very popular in England back then. They messed about with a Ouija board one night at a party, but in the days following, everyone who had engaged with the board suffered a spate of bad nightmares, so they discarded the board by throwing it in the trash. The nightmares stopped. At this point, most people are probably expecting the board suddenly appeared on the doorstep one day, but no such cliche happened in this instance. Reality was far more unremarkable. A few months after discarding the board, my auntie was hanging up a Christmas wreath. A strange feeling of unearthly dread came over her, and she passed out. She woke with the same horrible feeling and couldn't shake it for days. A few weeks later, Christmas arrived. The day after Christmas, her husband died suddenly and without warning, a heart attack. He was only in his 40s. From that time onwards, no one in our family would hang up a wreath at Christmas. We still don't. A friend of mine bought a Ouija board in high school for fun. She got it at a flea market for a few bucks and was just curious as to how exactly they worked. Simple curiosity. So she took it home that night and put it in her bedroom closet. She didn't open it yet or anything. She didn't really think anything of it. She viewed it as just some piece of wood that people have varying beliefs about. That night, she said she had terrible dreams, the worst she has ever had in her life. She wouldn't even tell me about them when I asked her. She woke up in a panic attack, and she thought she was hearing a humming or whisper noise coming from her closet where the Ouija board was. She talked to her parents and moved out of the room and slept downstairs on the couch for the rest of the night. The next morning, she woke up and felt very sick. She started to question herself and ultimately decided she was getting that thing the F out of her house. So she goes into the closet to get it and claims that it wasn't on the top shelf where she put it, but instead fell over on the ground. That day, she drove that thing to the dump, and for a while, she said that she was still having weird and vivid nightmares. She said she stayed out of the closet and only went in there if she needed to. She said she could feel the wrongness in the closet, and she completely moved her shoes and clothes out from it because what happened. Not scary, but weird. My mom had a teacher once who was a wizard. He wasn't a teacher for long, but taught my mom a few of the other kids how to use tarot cards. One of the other kids became his apprentice and was really secretive about what he learned. My mother talked about it like it's a perfectly normal school experience. So we're walking in a cemetery in our hometown. It's about midnight, bored, mostly killing time as teenagers. We find a cat, and it starts following us. It looks clean, so we pick it up and carry it with us. While wandering around, something moves behind one of the gravestones. My friend goes, "Hey, it looks like someone's there." Then a figure stands up with some weird mask on. Then, almost in sync, like 10 other figures stand up with other odd masks on. We throw the cat at them and run. Well, if you're in a cemetery at midnight and you see someone pop up wearing a mask from behind a grave, and then you see 10 more, don't be surprised. You're just part of it. Old friend of mine, A, had a Ouija board and used it with his twin brother B and some cousins. A doesn't remember this, but his brother said he was acting weird after they were done. That night, B had nightmares and woke up to A standing over him, holding his hands up as if he was holding a knife. A was sleepwalking. They both believed he was possessed. I remember them saying after a while their grandma ordered them to have him exorcised. I forget the rest of the story because they told it to me many years ago, but that was scary enough to stick with me. It was a sunny afternoon, sitting in the corner of the empty playground where we sat with our fingers perched on a planchette, hovering over a homemade Ouija board. We were trying to call Bloody Mary into our midst when our friend shrieked. Her bra strap had snapped in two. I had no idea if she was faking it or if it was legit supernatural, but she showed us her snapped bra strap and we all screamed like little girls, which we were. Like 6 or 7 years ago, I posted a lot in an online forum. One day in the paranormal stuff thread, a new girl showed up claiming she knew how to cast spells and some she had made. Since I don't believe in almost anything, I told her we should make a test. She should cast a spell on me and tell 2 users from that thread what will happen to me and when. A couple of weeks went through without anything weird happening to me, so I asked her and the other users which was the spell. They told me that I had to wake up at 2 a.m. for a complete week without being able to sleep again until the next night. She claimed she did something wrong and cast it on her boyfriend, lol. From same forum, since there were a lot of people who, like me, don't believe this stuff, we proposed some sort of activity with some of the users who did believe, especially since lots of Ouija board stories were being told, to make a session with a Ouija board. The people who didn't believe will be the only ones playing, and the ones who claim they played and weird stuff happened will only watch and record. Well, sadly, we never got to make it since none of the believers wanted to participate. A family member of mine lives in Western Africa, and while it's a mixed bag of people who do and do not believe in Juju, birthplace of voodoo, so that's what it's called over there, however, there are a lot of locals that won't F around with it even if they don't believe it. I remember going to visit family friends who had a coconut plantation, and I was wandering around the property when I found a bunch of green wine bottles filled with what appeared to be blood or another dark liquid, and a single chicken feather poking out of the top, hanging from the trees along the property line. It was a little spooky, but I didn't go running out there or anything later that evening. We went for a walk down to the beach, and I saw a full whale skeleton on the beach, bleached by the sun, and it was surrounded by little white wee huts. So I figured Juju was big in the surrounding village and asked my family friend what the deal was. He confirmed that the nearby village took Juju pretty seriously, and when he was first building his home on the coconut plantation, his building supplies were constantly going missing, so he started hiring guys to watch over the supplies overnight, but they'd either tip their friends off or steal the supplies themselves. So my friend's wife put him in touch with a local Juju shaman, and he came to do some stuff around the yard, advised my friend that everything should be taken care of shortly. So, friend gets back to ordering lumber and building supplies, and again, it goes missing overnight. However, the story goes that over the next month, 4 men who were known to have been involved with stealing the supplies all died or were severely injured in unconnected events. Car accident, snake bite, mysterious illness, probably malaria, honestly, and ever since then, none of the locals come into the coconut grove without an invite, and my family friend doesn't F with Juju anymore. Perhaps it is real. Perhaps it could be if you believe in something enough that you can manifest it into reality. What do you guys take for the occult overall? I spent the summer working in Lome, Togo, where the voodoo religion is originally from. Think white clothes, white face paint, necklaces, the fetish markets with shrunken heads, salves of unknown origins, the whole shebang. The most interesting part to me was the style of Christianity that took hold strongly there was Pentecostal. The real snake shaker speaking in tongue shit. It's almost a Christian variation on voodoo. The best was my next door neighbor lady, and no one believes me, so I never tell the story in person. We shared a courtyard, and every other Friday night or so, she would ritualistically slaughter and offer up a chicken. The only thing is Togo is a French-speaking country, and her speaking in tongues was in English of all things. She must have known some English. Anyway, her chant was always, Jesus Christ, Barack Obama gonna immolate the sinners, over and over. Also, there were portraits of Obama on walls all over Togo as if he were their president. Another priestess woman often cooked over a pot on fire in front of her tin roof house near my place. One night, I was walking home with a fellow legal intern, and she said in French, "Good evening, whites. May the spirit of greed possess no man who passes you in the darkness." I will never forget a voodoo priestess stirring a pot over a fire saying that to me in the dead of night as we walked home. A lot of people aren't going to believe me, and that's fine. You shouldn't believe half the things on the internet anyways, but I'm saying that this actually did happen. So, back in the summer last year, I started getting more into witchcraft and rituals. Spell jars, incense, herbs, moon water, all that jazz. So, after I did a bunch of research on how to make spell jars and the steps to go through it, I decided I wanted to finally make a protection spell jar. That's the first spell jar or spell you have to do before you start anything else. So I did everything I remembered to do. I lit incense and cleansed the jar and my workspace. I told each herb what its purpose was as I put it from my hand into the jar, and I used a white candle to seal it. Keep in mind, I did this around 11:30 to 12 at night, so I started to get a little dizzy and tired, assumed it was just from the incense, and decided to go to bed. I was laying down in my bed, and I felt kind of weird, like something was just off, like that kind of gut feeling. So I peek over a little on the side of my bed, and out of the corner of my eye, I see this black figure was just sitting on the ground staring at me. And then I quickly turned my head fully, and it looked like its whole body just smacked on the ground and dragged underneath my bed. Of course, I turned my phone flash on and started freaking out. And I quickly look up what the F that was, and if I accidentally caused it. Turned out, I didn't pray to my spirit guide for safety before I did the spell, so the thing I saw was a shadow man, and they usually show up if you did something in the spell wrong. I don't know, just thought I'd share my creepy experience.